of unhealed sexual trauma. So, if you did not see part one, where I tell my story of the sexual traumas that I experienced from a very young age, and also the traumatic experience I experienced at the age of 15, please click on the link down below in the description box and view part one first if you're looking for more context. So in this particular video, I'm going to talk about how I began to truly heal that energy of sexual trauma. I talked about how sometimes we don't realize or recognize that when we go through things in our childhood, when we experience traumas and crises and hurts and challenges and pains and issues, that we oftentimes carry that into our adulthood. And it indeed affects the way that we decide and choose partners. And so this isn't everyone's story, but this is a lot of people's stories out here. And what I want to do is I seek to bring awareness to the fact that we need to begin to truly get to those core wounds. We need to truly begin to heal that energy so that we can successfully go through the proper, healthy relationships, okay? That's not to say that relationships are meant to be perfect, but it's just to say that there are certain things that we go through in relationships that we don't have to, if we can really get to the core and heal. And then we can also choose better partners, because I really feel like unhealed wounds is one of the main causes of choosing partners that are not good for us, okay? Because oftentimes when we have unhealed childhood wounds, we choose partners that reflect that wound, okay? So I am a believer in self-awareness, getting as much self-development as possible before getting into committed relationships. And I'm here to tell you that for someone who's been married twice, okay? So I know a little something about what I'm talking about. So let's get into how I began to really heal my own trauma, my own sexual wound. So I'm married. I'm in my second marriage during this time, and it was rocky, okay? I was going through a lot of different things. We were on the verge of separating, divorce, and I was just looking at my life and looking at my choices and thinking, I don't know if it was the stars just aligned and said, it's time now to work on this. But it's almost like I just woke up one morning and was like, I need to work on this. There's something within me that is off. There's something within me that needs work. And so with that being said, sorry about it. So with that being said, I began to really look within myself, and I realized, there's something unhealed within me. There's something very wounded within me. And one of the first things I did was begin to look at the sexual assault that I experienced. And I remember thinking to myself, I've never really told anyone about what happened to me. And again, if you want to know more about what happened, part one. So the first thing I said to myself was, well, anytime I try to talk about it, it brings up such immense pain that I can never get through the whole story of what happened. And so even to be able to tell the story without crying, the way you'll see on part one, is because it took work to get there, and it's because I gained peace with that. Like I had to gain, excuse me, peace with that understanding. And so I said, okay, so first thing I want you to do, self, is I want you to begin to recount what happened. And I want you to speak it out loud. Because there was a time I could not speak it out loud. I couldn't. And anytime I would try to, the tears would just well up and I would just go into this extreme. I was extremely hurt by this situation. Okay, and I know that everybody deals with things in their own way differently. But for me, that situation was extremely painful. It was traumatic for me. And just to talk about it was very traumatic, okay? So I told myself, I said, self, first things first, you need to be able to speak on what happened to you. So I rehearsed it. I would say it to myself, okay, this, all right, I would look at it. I would go back into my mind, into my subconscious. I would allow myself to look at it. And so I would sit there and I would go through every action of what happened. And I could remember even what, this was almost 20 years later. And I could almost remember every single detail still. Even to this day. I can remember where the table was. I can remember what color the door was. I remember where the chair was, everything in my mind, right? And to this day. So the first couple of times I did it, I would start from the very beginning of how I met him and what that led to. And the first couple of times I did it, I couldn't get through it without crying, without bawling tears, without shaking. Eventually, but I said I'm not going to give up on myself. And eventually, I just kept saying it, kept rehearsing it, kept repeating it. And I would get further and further through what happened to me. I was able to get further and further until it got to the point where I realized I can tell the story. I can tell what happened to me, and I didn't cry. I could get through the story without crying. I could get through what happened to me without crying. And so at that point, I realized that I had really accomplished something. Okay, so first things first, you need to be able to tell your story. That's first things first on how you begin to heal this. You have to be able to speak on what happened to you. So if you're in a place in your life where you're finding it hard to even speak on what happened to you, first try writing it down. And if you can't write it down, do what I did and just gradually begin to go and recount the situation of what happened to you until you get to a place where you don't have to cry about it anymore. Now, let's go a step further. So once I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I can actually tell this story. I can actually tell what happened to me without crying. I then decided to write him a letter, okay? The one who caused the trauma in my life, the sexual trauma, when I was 15. I said, okay, his name was Ron, and don't ask me what his last name is because I don't remember. But in this letter, I wrote down everything, like as if I was going to send this letter to him. I wrote down everything I always wanted to say to him. And I wrote down every emotion and feeling that I felt because of what happened to me, because of what he did to me. And I was able to get that out, and I expressed myself in that letter. And then when I got to the end of the letter, I said, well, I forgive you. I do. I forgive you. So that's another important part of healing that energy, is learning to forgive the person. Now listen, to forgive someone does not mean that you accept what they did to you. To forgive that person is to understand that maybe you don't know what that person was also experiencing in their own life to cause them to do this to you. But this forgiveness is for you. The forgiveness was for me. Like, okay, you know what? That's the past. Now I forgive you for what you did. Because if not, I'm just harboring this pain. I'm harboring this anger. I'm harboring this hurt for this individual. And they're just living their life while I'm over here making bad decisions and hurting and crying because of what they did. And I truly believe that in the letting go, in the forgiveness, because that's really what forgiveness is about. It's about letting go. Forgiveness is about making peace with what has happened to you. Forgiveness is for you. So at the end of the letter, I said, I forgive you. Because now I leave it up to the divine what happens with that person or what has happened. You never know, because I don't. But it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, it's me when I look in the mirror. At the end of the day, it's me that I see. So with that being said, I can no longer place the blame on the person who did that to me. I now need to look at myself. Now, what can you do? It has happened. And there's nothing you can do to change that. So now what can you do for yourself? How can you love yourself more? How can you truly begin to heal yourself? Empower yourself. Because that's how you win. That's how you overcome. So at the end of the letter, I folded it up, I put it in the envelope, and I set it to the side. And then when I was really ready, I said, okay, it is done. I picked up the letter, I read it one more time, I lifted it up and threw it in the trash. That's how so make it personal for you. You can do what I did, of course. You can follow that path. But you can also make it more personal for yourself. So that's how I begin to heal that energy. That's how I begin to heal the trauma. Now, the second step, which was very important for me, is claiming my sexual power back to myself. Beginning the process of claiming my sexual power back to myself. Because at the end of the day, it didn't really begin with that sexual trauma that happened to me when I was 15. It began in my childhood, in my early childhood. So now I need to start the process of reclaiming my sexual energy. And for a lot of people, that means it's okay to get therapy. Like, it's okay to see someone about that. Truly. For me, it was abstaining. Completely abstaining. And, it worked for me. Even to this day, I'm celibate right now. Yes, if you don't know what celibate and abstinence is, you can look it up. But it's basically I abstain from sexual contact and intercourse at this time in my life. I really do. And I do not watch pornography. I find pornography disgusting. And I mean, you're grown, right? To each their own. But for me, I had to claim my life back. I don't need pornography. I had to claim my energy back. And for me, pornography is disgusting. No, I don't watch pornography. And that was one of the things that I did. I abstained from intercourse for long periods of time to cleanse my aura, to reclaim my energy back to myself. and I don't do anything that I don't want to do. And I came to realize that I can be whole, I can be beautiful, I can be in the fullness of who I am, and it doesn't require a sexual relationship. It doesn't. And I don't have to do and be what everyone else is or thinks I should. Mm-hmm. So, looks can be deceiving. But let me just tell you, yeah, I practice abstinence. What I have is precious. What I have is gold. And I embrace that. And that is how I reclaimed my sexual energy back. Abstinence and celibacy. Long periods of time. And at this point in my life, I've been basically celibate for almost an entire year. And again, I do not watch pornography at all. And I don't believe in this new age stuff that people's doing, toys and all that stuff. I don't do none of that. Just want to throw that out there. Okay? Yeah. So it's all about, at the end of the day, reclaiming your sexual power back. Healing within, healing the deep wound within. Self-forgiveness, forgiveness of the other person so that you can move forward, move on and heal. And then resetting yourself. You have to reset your body. You do. And you do that from abstaining from everything that was pushed on you. And then you gradually reclaim what's really meant for you. What's really there for you. So as promised, that is part 2 of the effects of unhealed sexual trauma. I got into how I really began to work on healing that. And if you would like more, I think I might do a live at some point where people can come on and ask me questions. If you would like to do that, if you would like for me to do that, please comment. More in the description box, you guys. If you would like to know more about me, you can get my book also. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you have any more questions, feel free to comment, and I'll compile something and answer questions. Okay, take it easy.